Imagine this with me. You find yourself in a darkened room with a weird theatery smell. The exit doors are there, but you don't want to do the whole airplane roll walk over your neighbor's large knees. So you just sit there and wait for somebody on stage to speak. If you are lucky, you can break the ice with the friend you came to this black space with. If not, you just sit there and wait, and wait, and wait, and wait, and BAM! Light hits a singular human being who begins to speak uninterrupted. He tells you a story that you've never heard of with the goal of entertaining or convincing you. What is certain is that, whether it be good or bad, this is going to be something quite unforgettable. This is a monodrama. Kurt Terov states that a monodrama seeks to portray the interior experience of a central protagonist with such intensity that the spectators feel as though they themselves are that character. I saw 3 monodramas in 2018. Wet, a documented journey by Alpharoah, Dead Was the Body Until I Taught It How to Move by Dominic Nah, and Taha by Amer Hlehel. Alex tells us what it's like to be an undocumented immigrant in the US. Dominic shows us how he used breakdancing to cope with his depression. And Amer reenacts the story of a famous Palestinian poet. I have 3 reasons why these shows were unforgettable. Physicality, narration, and artistic quality. Physicality. Every one-man show or monodrama I've been to has taken place in small spaces. Alex's and Dominic's performances took place in black boxes that seated no more than 80 people, and Amer's was performed at a mid-sized theatre. The physical proximity allows the performer to seize the attention of the audience immediately. On top of being the only object of focus on stage, the performer is also able to interact with the audience on a more personal level. Dominic begins his performance by liberally spraying cologne all over his body before he begins the breakdance. That's about 5 or 6 puffs. The audience seated around him in a studio dance cypher is able to see and even smell the sweat dripping and the scent emanating from his body as he pirouettes from top rock to down rock. He draws you in, obliterating any notion of a fourth wall. As with Alex and Amer, he too talks directly to your face, not staring into the distance trying to find his focus. Dominic and Alex and Amer talk to you. You listening gives them the added motivation. When Alex speeds through his rant about the bureaucratic nightmare he finds himself in when he attempts to leave the US to visit his family in Guatemala, we feel as helpless as he does. Each frown on his face provokes a frown on our own. The energy created from the coming together of an entranced audience with a willing soloist that's putting it online is theatre magic. Second point, narration. The singular performer has full reign of his story. He plays himself, like Alex or Dominic, or he plays a central protagonist, like Amer, who plays Taha. He is the voice of every character in his story and every thought that is articulated. He is the most masterful of the 3. He neatly divides his play into segments that begin and end with a poem written by the real Taha Muhammad Ali, who the play is based on. Amer proceeds from the carefree nature of Taha's childhood, telling it from the perspective of an older Taha to emphasize the longing that one has of a more blissful past. As Taha and his family are exiled from their homes after the declaration of the State of Israel, Taha's nostalgic retelling shifts to one of fear amidst uncertainty. The same fear that Alex displays in his own story of displacement. Both Alex and Amer voice the other characters that appear in their story. The stern voice of Taha's father, the melodic sound of Taha's first love, and Alex's impression of his daughter, who needs to listen to music to get over how stressed she is over her father's predicament. These voices color the story and emphasizes the heartbreaking quality of their experiences. When Alex's mother realizes the duress that her son went through, Alex takes a step forward, assumes the voice of his mother. I swear I wouldn't have done it. I know I brought you into the country the wrong way. Alex had emphasized the matriarchal qualities of his mom and her takes no shit from anyone attitude. Yet, it is at the point of her confession, her plain assumption of blame for Alex's undocumented status, and Alex's own performance of those powerful words that would move even the coldest of hearts. However, the individual quality of its storytelling can render one-man shows draggy. Little is left to the imagination because one person is always telling you what is happening. Alex is long-winded at times, especially when he elaborates on his life in America. It is only when he travels to Guatemala that the play thankfully picks up the pace. Dominic's show likewise suffers this drag. Perhaps due to his inexperience on stage, Dominic fails to project his words at multiple times during the play. He perhaps gets too conversational at certain points in the play. The overall flow of his piece was too staggered and inconsistent. He had also a knack of looking at the playwright, dramaturg, and director whenever he felt unsure or uncomfortable with the piece, he had made them sit in the first row of the audience. These aspects broke my attention throughout multiple points of the play. Further, some of the more emotional moments were maybe milked a little bit too much, and thus felt like it went too long, or perhaps it was overly indulgent. Overall, the show felt too uncontrolled. Yet, this is perhaps the reason why it was so memorable for me. Dominic's performance can be excused if one takes it as therapy, rather than theatre. It is clear that he wanted to exercise his demons with his performance, as the program booklet states that something keeps happening, and he needs to talk about it. Dominic talks about how his father's death sent him into a spiral. The older man had been Dominic's role model, and he had an affair. Dominic weaves this familial drama into his own journey to New York to find his breakdancing idols. Both stories end in a sense of disappointment. Both have something to do with mental illness, and both have urged him to perform it, regardless of how prepared he was. So, if it was therapy, I truly hope that it was successful. But given that it was a paid performance, more could have been done to make it more successful. Artistic quality. But what differentiates a monodrama from just another random dude telling you about his life? As with any other decent enough theatre piece, one-man shows are supposed to be works of art. There should be something about it that elevates it from the mundane to the sublime. Dominic incorporates breakdancing into his piece, emphasizing its cathartic nature with each back-breaking move he executes. The community he finds due to his practice also mitigates the pain and depression he felt from his father's death. His story exalts the efficacy of hobbies and the edifying effect they can have on a tortured mind. Amer and Alex add a poetic flavor to their productions. Amer incorporates Taha's actual poems and uses them to reinforce each stage of his life. Alex is a professional spoken word artist, and he brings his talents to the stage. His poems, done in both English and Spanish, help form his stage identity from the start. As an undocumented immigrant, he needs to find alternative ways to get his message heard. He starts with spoken word and later weaves his poetry into his own life story. Alex's performance is proof that the power of poetry is magnified with context. The spoken word form allows Alex's anger and desperation to shine through, as well as being emblematic of his wholly American roots. Amer was wise to include Taha's poetry as well. Poems constantly remind us of the reality of the situation. Taha had a home, Taha was exiled, and Taha wrote poems to express the thoughts he had kept pent up in his heart. His father opposed his poetic inclinations, but Taha carried on anyway. To honor his sacrifices, Amer makes art out of Taha's tragedy, just as Taha had done with his poems. Amer tells us of how Taha left his childhood home due to the fear of the Arab-Israeli war, moved through refugee camps until settling temporarily in Lebanon. Through all of this, Taha studies poetry and betters himself despite having essentially no formal education. He does this all the while having the hope of one day returning to his original home. Amer speaks in English for the entire piece, but he elects to recite all the poems in Arabic. With this decision, he invites the late Taha back into the theatre space. He lets the audience hear the poems as they are meant to be heard. The play ends with Taha's most famous poem, Revenge. In the context of the play, Taha reads it to an audience in the US. But because of the work that Amer did, it felt that Taha was alive and speaking directly to me. I went to each of these plays with an expectation of its message. Amer is going to tell me that Palestinians have been treated unfairly. Alex is going to say that immigrants have a hard life. And Dominic is going to share how breakdancing helped cope with his depression. All three shows delivered on this expectation. Yet I came out of these performances a slightly altered individual. Instead of viewing the issues of Palestinians, undocumented immigrants, and depressed individuals from afar, I managed to co-experience their precious stories. Instead of being simple talking points on the news, these issues took on individuals, people I could hear, see, and even smell. I might not be a Palestinian or an undocumented immigrant, or even be depressed any longer. But these three people have reminded me of every person who still faces these issues. If I were a Palestinian, undocumented immigrant, or someone with depression, I might feel the same emotions, carry out the same actions, and be compelled to say the same words. The world becomes smaller, and I am reminded that my heart can be a little bigger to everyone around me.